Well, hello there, and welcome to day 100 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Now, I would love to say that I've prepared a film for the 100th day that, in the same way that I did with the 50th, where I put polls up, I allowed people to submit films I should be doing and then vote, and then of that shortlist choose a film that I think would be the best film to cover. But with the BAFTA Live Coverage tomorrow, I already had quite a lot to do, basically, and a lot to prepare for. And of course, wanting to get as many films in as possible. But I can't not acknowledge that today, 100 days, 100 videos plus the bonuses, so more than 100 videos. And I might reward myself tomorrow on Monday with a sort of nice, relaxing treat because of it. But today I continue the BAFTA nominees coverage with the Ruiz Ahmed film Mogul Mowgli. So this is it is directed by Bassam Tariq and written by Ruiz Ahmed and Bassam Tariq and stars Ruiz Ahmed. Unfortunately, there's something to be said about why, particularly in Hollywood, actors stagger their film projects, particularly ones that they think are going to go for awards contendership. And the way that actors sort of approach the strategical release of their films. Because Mogul Mowgli and Sound of Metal, I think, are going to be two films that, if anyone looks at both of them, they're going to see a significant number of parallels. And I think on some level, it diminishes one, or diminishes them both in some ways, because they are very similar in some ways, I suppose. Now, that's not necessarily the fault of the filmmakers or Ruiz Ahmed, because it's partly a product of COVID and the nature of release schedules. With, I think, Mogul Mowgli was a 2019 film, and for one reason and another has been pushed to 2020, and Sound of Metal has, of course, been pushed to now, well, not even now, and they've, of course, both ended up in the same year's consideration for BAFTA. Unfortunately, as well, I still haven't seen Sound of Metal, so everything I say about it will be hearsay and my understanding of the film from the little that I have, but you'll see when I start to draw parallels how broadly obvious they are. And unfortunately, that means I suspect that of the two films, I am seeing the lesser of the two. So the film follows Ruiz Ahmed's character, Zed, who is a British Pakistani who is a hip-hop artist who's just about to go from having a successful career to having that transition period to having a major career, internationally. He's already living in New York at the beginning of the film and has really started to build success, but this is clearly the turning point for him. Now, because he's returning to the UK, because he's about to go on a European tour, he decides to visit his family. And the core of the film is about a man confronted by his identity and the fact that he is grappling with the ideas of, who he is, what his heritage is, and what exactly he puts out there in the world, especially as a performer, in relation to his culture and what that means to him. And it's interesting that I watched this back to back with Minari, because I think on some level there is that same immigrant tension, I suppose, that immigrant internal tension, because again, this is a film that it doesn't have a great deal of external threat to the characters, but it's very much about defining your identity in relation to your heritage, from your country of birth, or in Riz Ahmed's or Zed's case, his parents' country of birth, in relation to your adopted country or your culture that you've been living in. And so the Minari Mogul Mowgli parallels are there, really, because of course this is much more a British perspective on that than of course the American one. And early on in the film, then, what transpires is that there has been something off about Zed's character from the beginning, but after a confrontation with someone and a visit to the hospital, it is revealed that Zed has actually developed discovered. It's been discovered that he has a autoimmune disease that is affecting his muscles. And the film really, to its credit, I didn't anticipate that. And I think the film really starts to look at different themes. I thought this was going to be much more focused on the hip-hop narrative. And hip-hop and the way that Zed's character expresses himself is prominent, and music is prominent throughout this film. But really, it's a film about identity and about rediscovering yourself in the face of a tragedy or a crisis. And because of this illness, you know, all of a sudden the opportunities that are afforded to Zed are changing. His relationships with people are changing, and it's a film about internalized reflection on sort of who you are as a person, which of course feeds into the character's identity, you know, who he is, where he's from, and what he's trying to say in his art. And to that respect, it is a good film. It's a solid character piece. I mean, Riz Ahmed is an actor who, frankly, until this year, I have not been giving credit to his range and ability. He's an actor whose name popped up now and then, but I didn't really identify him until very recently. I mean, I remember the first film I saw him in, which was Four Lions, which was an excellent film and a very powerful narrative where he leads that cast really well. But I don't know, I didn't take note of him as an actor, and then he's gone on to America with films like Nightcrawler, and gone into Hollywood with more of your blockbuster things with films like Rogue One and Venom, and yet I don't know, his name would come up, and yet I just didn't really pay him a great deal of attention until last year when I watched the short film that was released directly to YouTube, The Long Goodbye, which is this part poetry, part sort of hip hop expression of a British Asian family's experience trying to live their life in the face of racial tension and a hostile British environment. And honestly, watching that film, I was astounded by how much can be said with how it's a very short film. 11 minutes is the runtime, and it is genuinely quite powerful and affecting. And Riz Ahmed, of course, being a musician, really infuses it with music and rhythm. And that's the other thing about Mogul Mowgli. As I mentioned, hip-hop is important, but the music and the rhythm within the body of the film is also... It's practically on the surface. It's so present within the film. There's just this sense of the use of both the hip hop, but also music of Asian origin, and there's just music in everything. You'll hear people's words or people speaking and people tapping on things, and just it'll create these moments of like musical style to it, and to the film's credit, I think that's really interesting and makes it stand out. These sort of musical set pieces almost. The film also uses this sense of sort of dreamy sequence slash hallucinogenic experiences. And unfortunately, I don't think that's one of the stronger parts of the film, where Zed is trying to confront issues in his life to do with his illness, to do with his Pakistani heritage, to do with his relationship with his family, and he experiences them through these dreams or hallucinations. And yet, they're very confused, and I'm not entirely sure what they're trying to say. And the film leaves it ambiguous exactly what we're, as an audience, supposed to be experiencing, or what Zed is experiencing through them. Initially, we thought that it was going to be a revelation about his mental health and whether there was some psychosis interspersed with all his other issues, but that's not really where the film leads itself. It's much more, I think, supposed to be a symbolic metaphor for the audience to experience Zed's emotional state, and I don't know if it works. And yeah, as I say, the problem with the film, having outlined a lot of these aspects, to do with the music, to do with the conflict of identity, unfortunately, without having even seen Sound of Metal, I'm aware that's very much what Sound of Metal is about, which is about a musician, or in this case a drummer, who has a declining health issue. He's developing a disability and has to confront his new reality through the change in his lifestyle. And of course, and inevitably, one will go, well, that will relate to his identity and his relationship with people. And people have really lauded Sound of Metal. Like, it's had multiple BAFTA and Oscar acknowledgements. And I think by putting them side by side, I'm concerned that Mogul Mowgli will just fade and disappear. It only has one nomination, which is Best British Film. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to win. Now that I'm getting a much stronger perspective on the category, having now seen 7 of the 10 nominees, I'm starting to get an idea of where I think it will go. But in spite of that, I don't think Mogul Mowgli is... It's not out of the running entirely, but I think it's one of the less likely winners if you sort of are ranking them. And again, I'll talk more about that tomorrow when we actually get to the categories, and also once we discover which categories are announced tonight. But yeah, I like the film. I think it was an interesting film, and it doesn't outstay its welcome. It is a fairly short film that is able to tell its narrative succinctly and get across the character struggle, and a great performance from Ruiz Ahmed, and a great performance from his supporting actors, particularly Ali Khan, who plays his dad. I think their relationships are really interesting part of the narrative, where it's about the fact that his dad is a character who left Pakistan and has essentially tried to close the door on his history and not really ingratiate Zed's life with whatever his past life was. And it's never really elaborated to why that is, but that's the tension between them, which explains why Zed himself has this really distant relationship with Pakistan. He has a really distant relationship with his family in the UK, because of course living in the US, and you really get that sense of tension between the father and the son about what's been left unsaid, what one doesn't know, and what the other one does. And yeah, I think it is a really solid film, and it was worth watching. I just don't know if it's going to be a great. Like I said with Minari yesterday, I don't know if it's going to be a great film. It's a good film, but we'll see how sort of how things pan out, both in the awards and then, you know, as time passes, whether people still talk about these films with any great acknowledgement. But yeah, so I'm now one day from the BAFTA Live Coverage. So join me tomorrow at 7 p.m. when I'll be discussing all the nominees, all the winners announced today, and of course, and we'll go through and see who wins what tomorrow. I will be doing a very short video tomorrow. It will be for a short film, so there will be a regular release early in the day. But yeah, please join me. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe to the channel because it helps me out. Please go through my back catalogue of videos. As I say, 100 videos now on the channel, so that's a lot to select from, and I'm sure some of them might be better than others. If you could follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I'm always tweeting trailers and film news, and of course daily videos. I share the links there as well. Thank you for joining me. Take care.